My beloved Madridistas, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Madrid. Look, I wasn't going to make a video today. It was not, definitely not part of the plan. I wasn't going to do it, but I just have to. I just have to. I feel completely compelled to do so. This issue, I've discussed it many times in my videos, the issue of the ongoing corruption in this league, but it's just out of control. It's out of control. It's just not funny anymore. It never was funny, but we have to address it because this has just gone to absolutely incredible extremes. The most common question I get on my channel is, how the hell is this happening? How everybody in the world can see what's happening? People aren't stupid or blind. Like, everybody sees it. And the most common question I get is, how can this be happening? How is it possible in the year 2025 in Spain, which is a modern European country? How can this level of corruption exist in plain sight? Well, I'm going to try to address that today. And I think in order to understand it, I think I'm the right person to do it. As a Spaniard, somebody who has lived, spent half his life here, I think I'm in a good, place to tell you sort of some of the kind of cultural, historical, psychological underpinnings, and in terms of how things work here, and how something like this could have happened, and continue to happen, because it's just out of control. Okay, let me give you guys my thoughts on this horrible subject that I absolutely hate, but just can't seem to avoid. Let's talk about corruption in La Liga, and where we go from here. Thanks for joining me. Let's get started. Madridistas, welcome back. Okay, let's talk about this absolutely putrid, rotten league. How we got here, how it's possible that this is still going on, and where the hell we go from here. Look, we do have to sort of talk about slightly cultural things because, different countries have, different attributes, and every country in the world has, really good things about it, really bad things about it. I have wonderful things to say about the U.S. And some not so wonderful things to say. And the same with Spain. Spain is a country that I love, has so much going for it, but again, has some very serious drawbacks. I think the advantage of living in both countries, I traveled an enormous amount during the course of my life, like a crazy amount. I lived in by the time I turned 30, I had lived, spent 3 months or more in 11 different countries. And of course, Spain and the US have always been a part of my life, two countries that I know and love extremely well. But it does allow you, I think, when you travel a lot and you're exposed to a lot, it's a great way of learning and contrasting, and it puts everything into perspective because it gives you a different frame of reference. Everything that you thought you knew and that you took for granted, it's just different because the more exposure you have to different things, the more you can challenge your own ideas and assumptions. I think traveling is one of the best things anybody can do to enrich themselves personally, but it also allows you to identify the good and the bad much more easily. And so Spain is a wonderful country. It has so much going for it. It's incredibly popular these days. So many of my friends want to move here. It's a great country. The people are wonderful. The lifestyle, culturally, it has so much going for it. This is a country that, Spaniards are all about love and life and people and, people's dispositions positive. Everybody's happy. Everybody's sort of smiles everywhere you go. At the grocery store, the cab driver, wherever, people are so pleasant. It's a very warm place. People are all about family and friends and spending time together. There's a great set of values. A very warm country. I love it. I love it in so many ways. But of course, it has its drawbacks because no country is perfect. And one of the sort of aspects of sort of Spanish culture that I don't particularly like is a general permissiveness when it comes to things like corruption. There's a kind of laissez permissiveness a dismissiveness that is very, very unhealthy, and I think is a big part of why we are where we are. Generally speaking, Anglo-Saxon cultures tend to be much more, they're sticklers in terms of following rules. There's a much greater respect for the rule of law. I find Anglo-Saxon cultures tend to be more loyal to principles and ideas. Spaniards tend to be more loyal to people and relationships. If your friend robs a bank, you never turn him in. I mean, if your kid is a dumbass, but you're never going to admit that he got the worst grade in the class because he's your boy, you love him. We're much more loyal to sort of people than we are to following rules or principles. And that's something that shows a lot in many aspects of life. But let's go. But there is a general permissiveness, a kind of, there's just generally less respect for the law than in some Anglo-Saxon or Germanic countries, and that's just a fact. Okay, let's go back to sort of how all this crap started. In order to then figure out where we are, why this continues, and where we go from here. Look, I've done a number of videos about what's happening in La Liga, about the Negreira scandal, and I strongly recommend that you watch these videos. The Negreira thing started in 2004. And there was an election for the president of the federation, and there was a gentleman's agreement among all the clubs. They were going to re-elect the incumbent, but in the last minute, Barça decided against that. They broke the pact with the other clubs, and they pushed forward the nomination of Villar, who ended up winning the elections and becoming president. And Barça, having been the big sort of sponsor of this presidency, had an enormous amount of influence on Villar. And one of the first rules that they changed, the second Villar came into power, now we're talking 2004, one of the first rules that they changed, and this is where you can start to smell the shit from a distance, they changed the system of electing refs for matches. So before, you had a group of refs in the first division. You would take a name out of a hat, and that ref would be responsible for whatever game, and it was all completely random. Now, in 2004, the first thing that Villar changed was that from that point on, they were going to cherry pick which ref does which match. Now, when you make a change like that in the operating guidelines and rules, you start to suspect that something is a little fishy, and of course, it was very fishy. And from that moment on, the payments to Negreira started. Now, why pay Negreira and not anyone else? The only person Barça had to pay was Negreira. He was the number 2 person within the ref organization, but he was the person that was responsible for all of the promotions and demotions among the refs. So the only person you needed to bribe or control was Negreira, because if you controlled him, he would have everybody else in line. Because if you're a ref in the second division and you want to go up to the first division, that was down to him. If you're a ref in the first division and you don't do what he says, he'll send you down to the second division. If you're a ref in the first division and you do what Negreira tells you to do, you'll get promoted, and you'll be promoted to the Champions League. You'll be able to travel around Europe and go to fancy hotels, and you'll be able to ref all these fantastic matches and make more money. So Negreira was absolutely the man in charge. He was the man to bribe. All of this has been admitted. You guys, there is no issue here. When some of, Barça friends of mine try to even debate this, there's nothing to debate. Negreira has admitted to receiving the payments, and Barça has admitted to making them. Now, Barça's initial excuse was, well, we were paying to get reports on refs, reports. So then, Laporta had a press conference, and he had these boxes on stage that were supposed to be reports. Of course, they were empty. When we were asked to see copies of the reports, they said, well, no, actually, they were verbal. So now the story is that they were verbal reports on refs, which, of course, is, nobody has been able to attest to ever hearing one of these reports. And then when they realized that excuse wouldn't fly, then they said, well, no, actually, we did make the payments, but we made them because we wanted things to be fair, because we think that everybody favors Real Madrid. Now, this is bullshit, because if you look at the ref statistics from before Negreira, things were pretty much equal. You look at red cards, penalties, for and against. All the stats for Madrid and Barça, prior to 2004 were pretty much even. There was no evidence at all that was the case. But the idea that you're paying refs so that they'll be fair is just completely absurd. So they've admitted to it. A judge in Spain, Aguirre, this guy saw all the evidence, and he said publicly that there's ample evidence of systemic corruption. Everybody's admitted to this, so there's absolutely don't even try to fight it. And then what happened is that statistically, after 2004, if you look at, and I've done this in my videos many times, go back to that video and please watch it. If you look at red cards for and against, penalties for and against, in the period prior to Negreira, Real Madrid and Barça were pretty much neck and neck. It was even. After the payments began to Negreira, the statistics went absolutely bananas. Bananas. All of a sudden, the net, so you just take, it's a computation, it's a very simple calculation. The number of red cards I get versus my opponents, that gives you a net number. The number of penalties that are conceded to me versus my opponents, and that gives you a net number, and you add them up, and it gives you sort of a score. Now, the anomalies that took place after 2004 are just ridiculous. I mean, to this day, I think from 2004 to 2025, the difference in red cards, I saw this the other day, red cards for and against you and your rivals while you're playing them. Real Madrid is at -2, Barça is at 65. So that's 67 red cards more favorable to Barça, and you get the same number with penalties. So the data supports this. They've admitted to it. Everybody knows it. And unfortunately, just nothing happens. And one of the great frustrations that I hear from people is that just, nothing happens. This is like in Spain, these guys get caught robbing a bank, and they keep robbing. Like all of this came to light about 3 years ago because it began with an IRS investigation, like the equivalent of the IRS here. The financial authorities, audited Negreira, and they said, where are all these millions coming from? And he said, well, they're coming from Barça. Barça paid me those millions. And that's how this whole story started. If it weren't for a financial tax audit, we would have never known about this. So it's really, really disgusting. Now, all of this is still going on. In the last, it's still going on, and it's what prompted me to make this video. I mean, in the last, last year, we didn't play very well, admittedly, and all that. But if you remember, when we were up 7 points, there was one point where we were up 7 points clear in the league. And the following 3 matches, and you can go back and look at my videos, and I covered all this stuff. The 3 matches that took place when we were 7 points clear were just the most atrocious robberies you can imagine. These were not small, controversial calls. These were glaring mistakes by the refs. This was very intentional. And of course, once the coast was clear and Barça went to the top and had plenty of points and cushion, in those final matches when Barça had already won the league, then all of a sudden our rivals are getting red cards. All of a sudden we're getting awarding penalties, to pad the statistics. But of course that only happens after Barça has secured the league. Look, it happened last year very, very clearly. You could see it. In this year alone, in this season alone, we've had the Mallorca-Barça match where Barça not only, Mallorca ends up with 9 players with one of the red cards was totally, unwarranted. But you had a goal scored when one of the Mallorca defenders was on the ground after getting hit in the head. When you can have a concussion, the player collapses, goes to ground, and the ref doesn't stop the play because he sees the rebound go to Barça, and Barça scores a goal while a Mallorca defender is on the ground for 10 seconds with a head injury. I mean, how is this possible? And then, of course, what happens last night I sometimes wonder, do these people think we're blind, or do they think we're stupid? Like, the penalty that was awarded to Barça was the most ridiculous thing that you can possibly imagine. Lamine lost position. He kicked the ball forward too much, and the Rayo defender came in front of him and took over position. At that moment, the Rayo player is the one in possession of the ball, and any contact from that point on would be a foul on Lamine, not on the Rayo player, because he won possession of the ball. But not only was it a ridiculous non-penalty that was awarded, but we didn't get to see the replay. They only showed it to us once on TV, which is incredible. They only show it once, and we're going to talk about the TV setup in a second. They only showed it once. We were never able to see it again. And then, of course, magically, the VAR isn't working. The VAR isn't working. Everybody in the Rayo Vallecano stadium had a signal. And there's pictures of people holding up iPads, and everybody had a signal, but not the VAR booth. And by the way, only 11 minutes. So for those exact 11 minutes, we were unable to see the replay. Now, if you're unable to see the replay in a very important call like a penalty, well, don't you think you should, stop play or replay? But if you cannot verify that it was a penalty, why do you concede it? If the VAR wasn't working and you're not able to analyze the play, why do you give the penalty? So you give the penalty because of the ref side in real time, but we can't see any replays. The VAR's not working, and you're going to keep the penalty? That's absolutely ridiculous. In any other country, they would have stopped play, and they would have had to, start again and replay again sometime when all the equipment is working. This was absolutely ludicrous. We all know what's going on. In the Real Madrid match, we had 2 goals disallowed that should not have been disallowed. But it's every single game you see it, and it's crystal clear. And I don't understand, what do they think that we don't see it? Do they think, I'm joking with my Barça friends about this, and I say, so what is it that you think that people see around the world? Do you think that people are going, wow, Barça won La Liga, they must be so good, let me go out and buy a jersey? Do you think that's what people are saying? That if you manage to bribe your way into winning a league title, that all of a sudden it's going to be good for you and everyone's going to buy your shirts? No, everybody can see what you're doing. We can all see what you're doing, and we can all see how you're doing it. And it's completely ludicrous. Now, in terms of, why nothing is happening, this is a very important question. And, okay, first of all, it's the cultural issue. There's a number of issues. But for one, cultural, there is just greater permissiveness in terms of sort of breaking rules. People are just more permissive about it here than they are in other places. And the problem is that the entire web of the football infrastructure in this country is corrupted in the same direction. So it's not just one thing. It's literally all of the components. La Liga, la Federación, el Comité Técnico de Árbitros, the refs, which answer to La Liga, the TV, so Media Pro, the company that does the TV rights, that operate everything you see, the replays, and everything that happens in the VAR booth, that company is owned and controlled by a guy called Rhodes, who is not only a lifelong Barça fan, but he actually lent Barça 100 million euros of his own money when Barça was doing their financial restructuring. This guy lent him 100 million bucks of his own money. That guy is in charge of everything you see on TV, what replays you see and don't see, what happens in the VAR booth, the fact that the VAR booth is locked compared to other countries. In Spain, you can't access them. You can't hear the communication inside the VAR booth. That's another peculiar Spain thing, because they want to make sure nobody can verify any of the corrupt crap they're doing. Even the TV is completely corrupt. Now, a lot of the written press in this country, completely corrupt. Look, I've explained to you guys in previous videos that this country, is sort of, when it comes to Real Madrid, is kind of 50-50, right? Half of this country thinks that Real Madrid is a national treasure. Real Madrid is the 8th wonder, that's what I believe, is the 8th wonder of the world, and something that we should all respect and just be proud that it's part of our country. I think every Spaniard should be proud of Real Madrid, because Real Madrid is an exceptional entity in terms of mankind. But half of the country loves Real Madrid and the other half hates Real Madrid. There seems to be nothing in the middle. You either are a Madridista or you hate Real Madrid because Real Madrid is too successful. Other people are jealous. There's a lot of envy. There's a lot of bad blood. So it's not, it's understandable that a lot of people hate Real Madrid, but the 50% that hate Real Madrid happen to be in charge of everything. They're in charge of the press. If you guys think that AS and Marca, because they're in Madrid, that somehow they're Madridista publications, they're not. They're run by Atletico fanatics. AS and Marca are doing nothing all day. They're always trying to stir trouble, create problems, create these sort of situations. They're always trying to stir the pot and destabilize Real Madrid. All of the written press, the radio people, they're all anti-Madridistas, and it just seems like these guys are all kind of colluding together, and they will never admit the truth. It's kind of amazing their commitment to either their club or their commitment to sort of their hate of Real Madrid is just, it makes them, they'll cover anything up. They'll these people are not interested in the truth. They're not interested in sort of objectivity and fairness. No. They hate Real Madrid, and they'll do anything that they can to hurt Real Madrid. And so it's very difficult because the press, a lot of the stuff that we see, like what you saw in Vallecas yesterday, I mean, that is a scandal. That should be first page of every newspaper saying this is appalling, but they'll hide it. They'll gloss it over. The press here doesn't even like to mention Negreira. Like you have to hide that, got to keep it under wraps. So it's even the press is controlled by these people. Barça has been known to pay journalists. This has been reported many times. Barça's breaking all the rules. They register players with money they don't have. Do you think that Barça ever got a penny for Barça Studios or Barça Media? No, but they registered 3 players on the back of money they never received. And they're trying to do it again with these VIP seats that don't exist. But the league lets them get away with it. It's just they constantly get away with it. That Real Madrid asked to try to play the Osasuna match a little bit later because the players weren't informed yet. And Osasuna said, yeah, no problem. We can play whenever you guys want. But La Liga said no. If Osasuna says it's okay and we say it's okay, what the hell does La Liga care what day we play? Well, no. They have to screw us over. No, they just have to. No matter what they can do with the calendar, they'll do it. On the other hand, Barça says, we want to play our first 4 matches away from home because the Camp Nou isn't ready and we want to collect the revenue of the attendance. So please. And what does La Liga do? They change the whole schedule so that Barça can play the first 4 matches away to accommodate them. Okay, then Barça says, we want to play a game against Villarreal in Miami. And the league says yes. The other clubs said no, and the idea was rejected because players and clubs said no. But La Liga said yes. They let Barça do whatever they want with whatever numbers they want. It's just still happening. So, the reason this still happens is the permissiveness that you have in terms of, following the law. Corruption in general here is just considered maybe a bit more just part of life, which is just not something that people would do in other countries. But that is unfortunately the truth. And, something has to change at the very highest level because the only way that this could change, because the federation, the head, hates Real Madrid. Tebas hates Real Madrid. The refs are all disciples of Negreira. Every single ref that is on the roster now, the whole structure around that corruption is still in place. Negreira's gone, but the operating tactics are still there. So nothing you can do there. So who could change this? Well, the government. The government could change this. And I very often said in my videos, I've said, why doesn't the Minister of Culture or Tourism or Sport, the Minister of whatever, industry, somebody has to say, this is one of the greatest exports that Spain has. This is one of the most popular leagues in the world. They are the 2 biggest clubs in the world in this country. And we are fucking it up. The reputation of La Liga is going to hell. And this is bad for the reputation of the country. It's just not a very good look when you know that the biggest hobby and sporting event of the country is rigged. That's not a very good look on a country that wants to be modern and wants to be kind of at the cutting edge of modern life. And and you have the most corrupt league in Western Europe. How is this how is this fucking possible? But the reason that the government doesn't do anything, and unfortunately, this issue crosses over into culture, social, but also political issues. Now, the reason that the government doesn't do anything is very simple. The guy that's prime minister now, who is the prime minister, part of the Socialist Party. Now, in the last elections, he didn't win, right? But in order to stay in power, he could stay in power if he created a political coalition, and he was short 7 parliamentary votes. So where did he get his 7 parliamentary votes? By doing business with the Catalan Independent Party, right? And by the way, there were riots here, and it became a big deal because part of the negotiation to get the 7 votes from these guys, in order for him to stay in power, was to concede to all of their demands. So all the people that rioted and committed crimes during they had a fake referendum a few years ago, all those people that were in jail, they get to be released. The guy that started the whole thing, who was exiled in Belgium, Puigdemont, well, he gets to be free now. We're not going to arrest him. He can come back to Spain and chill out. So basically, in order for this guy to stay in power, he has conceded to all of the demands of the independent Catalan party. So he's not going to do anything that upsets Catalans in any way, shape, or form. So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? I mean, Real Madrid has to take, I think, a legal route. But the legal system here works, but it's very, very slow. But what are we supposed to do? So Real Madrid, of course, on Real Madrid TV, we show the repeated mistakes that the refs make, which are not mistakes. These are deliberate things that the refs do. We simply expose. And then, of course, they pick on us. We're the bad guys because we're picking on the refs. We're just replaying what happened in reality. Now, if that is offensive, it's because you have something to hide. But a TV station that simply replays things cannot be accused of anything. But of course, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And the one thing that these people do not want is sunlight. And they don't want anybody looking at this. And this is why they're so opaque. This is why the newspapers hide everything. And it's just really disgusting. So I'm afraid what you guys saw in Vallecas yesterday and what you saw in the Bernabeu the previous night, this is part of a longer pattern. This has been going on for 20 years. Barça has infiltrated all of the infrastructure of football in this country at every level. And I'm, very surprised that Florentino Perez, who's a really bright guy, really intelligent man, very powerful in his own right, I think he was just so distracted with, running the club and running his businesses that it didn't occur to him that in the 20 years that we were concentrating on just going out and kicking ass, in those 20 years, Barça basically managed to infiltrate every nook and cranny, every corner of society in terms of communication and sort of corruption, and the refs and the press and the VAR booth and the TV and the replays and the commentators, even the commentators on TV. It's just disgusting. The way that they narrate a Barça match compared to Real Madrid, it's just, they literally, the same play, they will have 2 completely different interpretations. It's absolutely disgusting. Look, I think this will one day change. I think that the country risks losing one of its greatest assets. La Liga is an export product. It's a massively commercial, lucrative export for this country. It is a massive part of the image and the brand of this country. This government doesn't seem to give a shit because all they care about is staying in power with those 7 illegal parliamentary votes, in my view. But there will come a day where the change will come, and we will have a government, hopefully, finally, one day in Madrid, that will pick up the phone and tell that Liga and the Federation, we're starting from scratch. This bullshit is over. We're going to have a transparent system where refs are refs on the basis of meritocracy. Our refs make more money, are the highest paid refs in all of Europe. They make more money than the guys in the Premier League or the Bundesliga. Tebas makes over 5 million euros a year. He makes a lot more money than the head of the FA and in other much richer countries. Do you think that that's normal? Do you think that it's normal? But no, the more you pay people, the more you can control them. And all of this is part of this disgusting setup that Barça has created over the last 20 years. One day a government will come that will fix all this, but you have to start from the top. This has to start from the top, and we need to just revamp the entire system so that it's fair and transparent, and so teams can compete and win properly. Because if you win or lose, you should do it fair and square. And what we're seeing now is just disgusting. Okay, sorry, I had to get all of this off my chest. Sorry about that. But anyway, those are my thoughts on the matter. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Thanks for joining me as always. And as always, Ala Madrid.